One, two, 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay. Um, okay, here, I think now it's working. Yo. Oh yeah, baby. Live. Okay, guys, we're already 5 live viewers, so thank you guys for tuning in. I'm telling you, thank you for waiting. It's gonna be worth the wait, I think, right?
Yeah, let's make it work.
It's gonna be worth the wait. People are gonna be wilding.
All
Um,
right.
okay, guys, fine. Welcome to the live stream. We were doing something incredible today, right? We're sitting down. First of all, we'll introduce Ferris, Ross Glick, the Urban Warrior. Everybody knows him. Um, yeah, well, tell 'em what we're doing here.
Well, we came together today, and I'll let Yoni tell the full story. We were going to do a live stream with a guy that I've been communicating with in Gaza on the ground. And unfortunately, he was claiming that he didn't have enough power, electrical supply to, with Wi-Fi and what have you. So unfortunately, we couldn't pull it off tonight. We're going to try again tomorrow. But we thought we would take this opportunity to introduce ourselves because Ferris and I, who I'm really pleased to become friends with, he and I are going to launch a podcast called Bridging Two Worlds. And we met a little over a year ago at a protest. He was there on one side, I was there on the other side. Fight broke up, more of a screaming fight, less than a physical fight, fight of words, of ideas, and from that, he and I connected and became friends and started communicating like two humans, two Americans. He being Muslim, and I'll let him tell his story, and myself being Jewish and a Zionist. But together, we think by changing the dialogue and really discussing solutions, we can bring some positive conversation to this country. So with that, I'll let Ferris introduce himself because he's got a really
But
amazing story.
I just want to say real quick. So if there's anybody in the Golani Givati brigades watching this, we could give our guy a little hot spot. So just like like for we really appreciate it. I mean, I know it's not the most important thing right now.
Well, we're gonna get there.
Let's let Ferris take it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So to clarify, uh, when we met, which was really momentous occasion outside of the Columbia protests last year, the breakout of words happened between you and Life of SQ, and we found that we were actually able to have a dialogue without it breaking out into a fight and people splitting us up and the police getting involved. But yeah, my story is quite simple. I grew up in South Carolina, born and raised, and to a Palestinian American family, Muslim heritage. Lived in Jordan for about 10 years and went to school in South Carolina. After that, I came up to New York City to make it happen here, and we came across a lot of people wanting to build bridges and meet people that I wouldn't have met in closed environments. So now that we're in the city, we're able to have these types of dialogues.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
And for me personally, I mean, just on an emotional level, to be able to have a conversation with somebody that, initially we disagreed with, and we're actually finding we agree on many things. But coming from, what's been such a divisive period in New York City and across the world, but specific to just our neighborhood, our community, um, the rhetoric has always been hostile, the inability, really on many sides, to just have a conversation. So I am grateful just that I'm able to have an intellectual, interesting, in-depth conversation with somebody who speaks for or from the perspective of the Palestinian, the Arab, the Muslim, not only from there, but also the side of the world, being an American. Like, so one of the things that I think that really connects us is we're both Americans. I was born in Ohio. I was born in North Carolina. My family comes from Holocaust survivors. I grew up in a community, a family of Holocaust survivors, but I also grew up in a community of really Americans. Most of my closest friends were, as a kid, Irish, Italian, Greek, Orthodox, Catholic, Christian. I played sports, and so I've always considered myself a very proud American and a passionate Zionist. And I think where we connect, he also is a very proud American, and
Oh yeah,
we,
you
we
must say.
yeah, I mean, we really connect under the, really as Americans, but clearly, our history, our roots, our trauma, our family bias, all of these things play in. And, we thought it would be interesting to come together and instead of having yet another podcast, a conversation, we want to talk about solutions. One of the things that we'll share, in terms of solutions is, truth. And, obviously I have bias, he has bias, but we're going to bring facts to the table, and we're going to have conversations. And his family, being from Judea Samaria, right?
Ramallah specifically, yeah.
Your father was from Ramallah,
Wow.
Allah,
and your
yes.
mother was from where?
Ramallah. Also Ramallah, but she was born in Jordan.
In Jordan. Got
That's
it.
good. We're both still pretty intact. It hasn't really been destroyed too much.
Ramallah, yeah,
It's very intact. It's
doing all right.
probably one of the most peaceful cities at this moment. In
Well, I was going to say, instead of me
right.
talking so much as well, because one of the things that I find so interesting is Ferris has been to Israel. How many times?
Good number of times.
Many times. So I'll let him speak from his
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's too much to say really, but in terms of facts, I don't have facts that I can regurgitate. I'm not too political too into the history of making sure that I have every T crossed and every I dotted. Um, but I have had the personal experience of going, and I do have family that's still there. I have I have friends on both sides of the line, and and that's helped me really develop an understanding that's not dogmatic. So my main objective here is offering some insight that others might not have because of the closed environments that we tend to grow up in and confirmation bias. Um, yeah, I've only experienced Area A of what's known as the West Bank as an American tourist that goes in.
Hmm.
I noticed that my Israeli friends were not able to go in those.
I've been inside.
Oh, nice.
I used to use a mechanic and everything and save money.
Yeah, that's illegal. Are you
What?
Israeli?
I'm Israeli.
That's illegal.
No, there's actually some area. Okay, there's actually some like I used to go to Deir Cadiz.
Okay.
So I was a horrible driver. I used to bang up my car all the time in high school.
Right.
Giant pothead. I couldn't drive without being high. And I had like I had a Mitsubishi Outlander, and the body of it was like so like if you banged into something a little bit, like the whole body got dented. So I was constantly in a body shop in the West Bank.
What's the name of the town?
Deir Cadiz.
Good.
Okay, if you drive from Shilat, the Modi'in area, if you drive right past Modi'in Elite, this will be a checkpoint. This is like the first town after the checkpoint.
Okay.
I think it's on Street Tishin, 90. And then right after the checkpoint is a town. It's called Dir Cadiz, and there's a Haredi city, ultra Orthodox city, and there's a lot of ultra Orthodox people who come to do shopping at Dir Cadiz.
Okay.
Um, you only see Muslims and ultra Orthodox there,
All right.
and me. Um, yeah, and then like there was like the mechanic like one time asked me to get him like he gave me a few extra 100 shekels to get him a pool table set and like
Okay.
balls
Okay.
from Israel, and I think in those places there's actually it's the most peace of just because it's like just business is like the spoken language.
Yeah, I mean the stigma is that if you go there, then you're instantly going to get attacked and all that stuff, and it's not safe. It's good to know that you can go
Few
to
towns. I want to go. I want to go to Jenin to say about that. Yeah.
Janine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Guys, see. I mean, but I was fortunate enough to be able to go, north, south, east, west. The only place I haven't been to is Gaza itself. But
Do you have friends or family or anybody in Gaza?
I have acquaintances that I know that I've known since probably for about 5, 6 years now. But no, my family is predominantly all in Omaha. From the ones that are there, the ones who haven't. So my family from my maternal side is immigrated to the U.S. in the 50s and the 60s. So for the most part, it's like 50% American, 50% Palestinian, actually in there, and that's really what I'm speaking to is that like the experience that I have is from a privileged point where I was able to actually go, you know, pretty much everywhere. I mean, they were. I had some people that were really surprised that an Arab can go into the settlements, and they were thinking, you don't have a work permit, you don't have anything, and you don't know anyone who's going there. Aren't you worried? I said, no, I need to get some snacks. I went to the grocery store, and everything was fine.
Which settlements did you
A
go to?
bit deal.
Big deal.
So what was it like going through the border crossings?
Um, it was
The
it
checkpoints?
was it was surreal. I mean, I hadn't experienced anything like that. Uh, when I was younger, it was going through the rental car with a Jordanian license plate, so it was known that it was kind of you're from outside. So we were we were able to just show our passports and go right through. When I'm in the Palestinian shuttle buses that go back and forth between
Yeah,
the villages,
like the
that's
Bethlehem ones.
yeah. Oh, you got in one of those?
Yeah.
That's yeah. You get
So
you
when
get stopped. You get stopped, and that could take an hour or
but
two
are you
long.
using your American passport?
Yeah, yeah. I don't have anything else.
So there's no problem.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you had a Jordanian passport as well because you were living there for so many years.
At the time, I only had that for a short amount of time, and that's called a temporary passport.
Got it.
They give that to permanent residents or residents uh, who pay it daily. But no, I didn't have Jordanian citizenship or anything.
Yeah, they didn't give Palestinian refugees
Sure did not.
citizenship.
Sure did not.
And they did more than they did in like Lebanon or Syria or any of the other countries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, on this topic, because we're going to change topics in a
Since
second, but we're going to actually on our show, we're going to get deeper into this about because his story that he shared with me about born in North Carolina,
South.
South Carolina, and then moving with his family. His father was successful in some businesses and had an opportunity to move to Jordan. And then how many years you were there? 10 years. So 10 years in Jordan, very formative years.
Yeah,
And I think it's very fascinating, the experience
yeah.
living between two worlds there because they treated you like American.
Yeah, largely treated like an American. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the general rule, but middle schoolers can be cruel. So
yeah,
Yes, yes. In any culture, that's for sure. I
yeah,
mean, it's a tough age, but particularly an environment that you're coming from the South in the USA,
right.
which is a unique culture within of itself,
Oh
where
yeah,
you're born,
yeah,
right? So you're an American coming from an Arab Muslim family. Now you're transplanted into the Middle East, living in Amman, Jordan,
right.
right? As an American now who's now has to essentially change his identity to become an Arab Muslim living in Jordan, who happened to have been born in America.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but the story of the immigrant, you're aware the assimil not too many cultures or not too many people come here and try to assimilate and put everything behind them. So
yeah, it's
we
true.
had we tried to cling onto some of that, keep some of the traditions and keep the language, the food, the religion, that stuff. Try not to shake.
But your parents weren't particularly, they were traditional, but they weren't like my family.
My
They weren't
parents were
religious.
not religious. Yeah, my parents were not. I mean, we had every family has the one or two religious uncles,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like extra religious, maybe. To the point where like reminding you better eat every last rice, or God's gonna hold you accountable for wasting food.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like
Is that Arab guilt? Because we have Jewish guilt. Very like
yeah, oh
similar
yeah,
stuff.
oh, there's definitely Arab guilt,
It's funny.
or Muslim guilt. Yes,
You have to
Muslim
go
guilt.
through rocks and yeah.
Oh, the rock throwing. Oh man, rock throwing it's a skill. It's a skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Very good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, David was too, right?
Yeah,
Slingshot.
the slingshot.
Story never ends.
I
Yeah,
never had.
yeah. I mean, but my childhood was like in the first 6 years, we didn't really know any difference. It was just everyone in the neighborhood rolling the red wagon, playing hide and seek, catching lightning bugs or fireflies. And when
South
we
Carolina, South Carolina.
South Carolina transplanted into to Jordan, uh, I would the first year I pretty much stood up on my bed just for the Star Spangled Banner, "Oh Beautiful," singing like patriotic American songs and pledging allegiance, hoping for the day I'd leave the desert, come back. But I grew to love it. I grew to love Jordan just because you get acclimated, you adapt to your
Sure.
environment.
Yeah.
Well, you
Wait,
your
so you were born in the United States, you went to Jordan,
When
then
I
you came
was,
back.
well, yeah, I went when I was 6, came back when I was 16.
Oh shit.
Radicalized.
Bunch
Yeah, yeah, but my formative
of
years,
rocks.
yeah, my formative years were there for sure. And yeah, I mean, one of my memories while I was over there was the breakout of the Second Intifada. We
Yep.
talked about the events of the late '90s. The king had died there, and
Yeah.
all types of uh, uh, events happened leading up until the 2003 Iraq invasion. That's when I was really singled out for being an American. It wasn't. It didn't really matter to people. I think people saw it as like, oh, you're just different. You dress different. You talk different. You act different. But in 2003, that's when it was, are you with us or against us?
Really.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, what is
But I mean, those are my people.
out of America, Dick Cheney's an asshole.
I mean, but like even when Americans come to Jordan, I mean, Jordan is a big hotspot for military, for
Well, Amman is an international city by many regards, right?
yeah,
You say it's
oh yeah, oh yeah. So yeah, that was
and it's not religious either.
no,
Amman is like any other
yeah,
cosmopolitan city.
that is pretty metropolitan. Yeah, and it was wild to see how uh, it was things were starting to shift. It felt around that time, 2003, 2001 to 2003. Uh, I was, yeah, I was actually in the U.S. for 1 year in 2001. I was lucky enough to be fifth grader on 9/11. Oh,
Oh,
so I was, uh, I was loved by both sides during those times.
oh, damn. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it must have been very difficult during.
Oh, it was nice. Like the friends that I made during then are the closest friends you can have. Because if you can sit with someone through that, then yeah, it's nice. And all walks of life, like you mentioned, like Irish, Italian, Jewish, you come to grow up Confederates.
Uh,
That's a yeah. That's a,
So I want to. We're going to
now,
change.
now we're all just MAGA, so it's
Now we're
okay.
okay.
yeah, yeah. Right,
Now,
I'm an
right on.
independent. I'm registered.
now we're all MAGA.
Yoni, let's change the
Son of
topic.
a brother.
Let's-
Thank
We should have.
you so much.
You should have wore the Trump mask. All right, let's switch topics. So we're going to update you soon, make some announcements on the official launch of Bridging Two Worlds. Lots to talk about. The main thing is to educate and learn, and he'll share his story, my story, our story together. Some of our ideas for peace in that region, and really we want to focus on solutions. It's going to be a serialized show, and lots of interesting points and facts that we're going to bring to the table. We'll have some guests. And so stay tuned for that. Let's change topics. So one of the reasons we actually all came together today is that I have a guy on the ground in Gaza, supposedly, who's been communicating with me for better 6, 7 months, maybe even 8 months. Reached out to me, through Instagram, um, just kind of communicating. He saw my posts on the Urban Warrior and what I was doing, and reached out and we started a dialogue. And I was very suspicious at first, and wasn't even sure if this was somebody really in Gaza. Spent a lot of no time. We spent over a period of 6, 7 months communicating, and I was requesting for him to make videos and pictures and send stuff to me so I could try to verify in some way if this guy A is for real. And then, as he was also telling me that he's anti-Hamas and that the people are starting to turn, and we're starting to see this in the streets. So the conversation we were having is this guy real? Yoni, I'll let him share. Has a theory on this, and and Faraz has his perspective. But the question is, what's happening in Gaza, is this real? Is this an updated Arab Spring? And this maybe, the time where the people in Gaza are going to turn on Hamas, call for elections, and bring this war to an end, and create, coexistence with Israel? Or is this something else? And I'll let Yoni introduce the theory.
Okay, so basically, my theory is I don't believe anything that's going on in Gaza right now. Um, I recently saw them doing the ceremonies for releasing the hostages. Um, it's a very interesting timing also for this to be happening, like, right before they're about to start resettling and everything like that. I think this is actually what Hamas is trying to do is they're just trying to rebrand, make it look like the people have rejected Hamas,
Explain that. What do you
that
mean?
like sort of like what Al Jelani did with ISIS, where basically the world wouldn't have backed another ISIS, right? We saw who ISIS is. We saw what ISIS is capable. The world would never back another ISIS because suddenly Al Jelani changes ISIS to HTS, gets a suit from Armani, starts shaking hands, cleans up, gets a haircut.
They're sanitizing him.
Exactly. Suddenly, all over the world, we're giving money, we're helping HTS. Um, I think Hamas trying to do the same thing. We're sort of like what's going to happen is that they're going to show that the people of Gaza rejected Hamas. They're no longer Hamas. They don't identify as Hamas because Hamas doesn't really have any sort of leadership at this point. Most of the leaders are dead. It's sort of just like a situation where just people are coming out of bunkers and fighting, but there's no real like central point of command anymore. So what they're doing is to make it seem like the people rejected Hamas, and then they're going to regroup, rebrand, and go back to one.
So it's an interesting. I'm always skeptical. The guy has asked me for money once, nothing big. He said he sends me pictures of family. He sends me videos of himself. He seems genuine. He's looking for help. He says he's a chef. He's got some medical issues. I had, again, my initial thinking is this is a scam. But my heart is, also thinking maybe this is real. And I'm also obviously on the PR and marketing side. Maybe I could break a story, right? Everyone's trying to get real truth of what's happening on the ground in Gaza. So I'm trying to get this guy to go live. And, obviously this is very dangerous for him as well because, you know, Hamas is still in power. So first, what do you think?
I mean, I think they're pretty desperate over there, and when you have someone that's starving and an average civilian who doesn't really have the empowerment of being associated with Hamas, so they don't arm him with whatever cans they have underground or whatever weapons they have, and he's inclined to reach for any aid outside. And even if that's the apparent enemy that they've been conditioning him to think is the enemy, that's going to be, you know, his if he has a way out, he's afraid he has no way out. He's starving, and that's what he's going to pursue.
Okay, so let's go through. Let's go with the side of let's go with your perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
And we were talking about this, and like, okay, let's suppose I believed him, right? We all believed him, right?
sure,
And we want to help him, right?
yeah,
One of the things I suggested is, there are rewards being offered for actual intelligence
Yeah.
on where the hostages are, or to help bring Hamas to an end. So I said, look, I'm not a billionaire. I can't just send you money. And even if I had the capability, how would I get you the money and how would I get you out? I'm not, the State Department, but what I could do is pass along, information to the right people that to be verified and, and then get in touch with you through other means. But, so let's go with the idea this is, an average guy in Gaza, right? He has no love for Hamas. He's got kids. He says he's a chef and he actually wants to leave. And this is a side note. One of my theories is that if offered the opportunity, I think half the people would leave and go to another country. I feel like they're being held hostage there as pawns, but that's a separate conversation. The question though is this guy real who's been reaching out to me, and let's go with Feroz's theory that this guy is just desperate. What do we do, right? How do we help him? Like and so he's tomorrow is going to be sending me more videos. I've asked him to send, go on the street, make some videos, um, of what's actually happening. But do we believe this guy is real, and what can we do about it? And you think that he's just desperate, and I say, okay, then how do we help him?
I think this guy's probably the next Al Jelani himself.
That's the other side of the argument.
I
This
think
this is a ploy. Is the urban warrior being duped? Am I being emotionally sucked into?
because he actually reached out to me and asked for money for a sex change operation.
Ah,
It's
we're not gonna go that way.
so
But so look, I'm getting a lot of comments now about, don't be fooled. This is a trick. Yoni thinks this is an op, a Hamas operation, a PR.
they're really good at it.
It's clearly so.
Hamas is really good at it.
Yeah, so in terms of uh, the recent videos that have come out of protesting, saying, we don't want Hamas, we're rejecting Hamas, hey, and they're going through that. You think that all that staged and they're what paying those people to do that?
So that's the question, Yoni. He raises a good point. We're seeing videos of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people taking the streets throughout Gaza. So the first question is that video fake? Is that
No, it's not fake.
okay? So there are really people who are marching through the streets of
it's-
Gaza. And so the question is
They
is
know
this real?
Hamas fighters.
But is it? So you're saying it's staged?
I think it's staged, yeah.
So you're saying this is not a real Arab Spring happening in Gaza. You're saying that Hamas is coordinating tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people throughout Gaza to parade and march through the streets like we're seeing, and it's all. I don't believe that.
No.
There's no way they can coordinate that. So what the guy's telling me is that Hamas is mostly finished.
They
He said,
coordinated lots of stuff.
so his position, what he's communicating to me is there's roughly, he believes his estimates is 10-15% of their capabilities are left. They're mostly consolidated around the Bear Aldine, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how to say it properly, but one of the camps, and they're in
Zero
hospitals. Yeah, and they're in some hospitals. So he did verify that he's been to the hospital. He knows Hamas are in the hospitals. Um, but he also believes that they're finished. But to your point, because I keep asking, well, then why aren't they upright? He said, well, they don't have weapons. They have nothing. They're
Right.
poor. They're starving. They have no weapons at all. So beyond just amassing in the streets, what else could they do?
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really it. I mean, I just think of all these protests that are happening here in the city. You look at what they're doing. And we were talking about the types of people that go out and protest. They're usually not the types of people that are institutionally established. You know, I mean, I'm probably putting it mildly and politely, but they're not the ones who are NRA card carrying, connected. Yeah, it's going to be people who are disgruntled, right? And if they did have any means of overthrowing, or I think they would have there's a vacuum and they would have gone for the power grab, right? There would have been groups of men that would have tried to overthrow if they wanted to, but I don't think they can. I think they're that's why I think they're desperate pleas. Um, but maybe it's benefit of the doubt.
Okay, so here's my question. Questions like, first of all, okay, if it's that, so why haven't they tried to do anything to hurt Hamas? Like, why haven't they gone like against them? Why is it Hamas killing them? Is like that's what they want.
That's what I give. So if these protests, to your point, I mean, clearly these protests are happening. So is Hamas allowing it to happen? Hamas can't stop it from happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's likely. It's likely. I mean, these days, I wouldn't be surprised. More far-fetched things are happening before our eyes. So if you think it's like a ploy, it's possible, but to what end? I mean, what are they?
Well, his argument is, and I'm not sure I'm there yet.
The rebranding.
He thinks that these protests are being allowed by Hamas as a means to show that there's a transition happening, but it's fake, right? It's superficial,
Sure,
right?
sure.
It's showing that Hamas is weakened, right? When in reality they're regrouping, and then and
And also, why like in the end of the day, like the evacuation of people who want to leave Gaza has like sort of started. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's from what I hear, like there's a few hundred people leaving Gaza by choice. They wanted to
but
like
that's nothing. I
every
mean,
day, every day, right? But no, but it's a few. It's. I mean,
my theory is
because also they don't want any media coverage, so it's like happening just like regular
so hold on
cars.
a second.
So why won't these people? You're so upset with Hamas, right? And you don't.
they're not allowed to be they're not being allowed to leave. So Abdullah was being quoted recently from Jordan,
Yeah.
right? And they're quoting him to be the smartest guy in the Middle East. The smartest ruler in the Middle East is Abdullah Jordan. And he came out saying, I'm Israel is my partner, but I disagree with their position and the right wing or the extremists in the government that are saying that we should be taking in more refugees. My position is that if by aligning with that I'm contributing to ethnic cleansing. And my position is saying, King, actually, if you took a vote and actually asked the people, more than half of them would willingly leave. They want to leave. They don't, and it's not because they're anti-Israel. They don't trust that there's ever going to be any type of leadership within the population coming out of Judea, Samaria, out of Gaza, that's actually going to lead them to peace and prosperity. I think again, this is what I'm getting from some of the people that I communicate with. I'm sure you have family there and know way better than I do. But my theory is that they're being kept in this imprisonment by the other Muslim countries because from a PR perspective, it enables this.
You need to have an enemy in
Right.
there from Israel. I'm saying so. Like at this point, why would the protests start now? Like once the people leaving starts taking place, right? Why? I just think that these. I think
But what you're saying though, but
the,
they're not allowing enough people to leave. That it's that what you're saying.
no, they
Accepting
are.
other
They
people.
are. And almost anyone who wants to leave can almost leave at this point.
Is that true?
I mean, no,
I'm talking
of
the last
course not.
2, 3 weeks. Yeah, they,
Maybe if you're talking about the last 2, 3 weeks, maybe.
So let
yeah,
me
I
ask
yeah.
don't
you.
know.
So I'm
But
talking about the
but
last
like,
two, 3 weeks.
if you think in general, especially the last 2 years, yeah, they're barricaded in. But to your point, I mean, instead of like I try not to theorize too much if there's a very clear Occam's razor. The explanation is now they're more emboldened to go out because they see that Hamas is weakened.
Yeah.
Maybe they're regrouping because they're
So
weakened.
then the question. Okay, so if
So it's
that's
like,
if
why are
that's
you coming out like so far into the end? Like that's when you just.
but don't look at it as in a timeline right now because who knows? This might not be the end, Yoni. I mean, you're contextualizing this like I don't see this as an end. But
I
let's
think it's done.
okay, but hopefully, but let's not put a time on it. Let's just keep asking the question of okay, if the people are by what you're describing coming out because again they're sick of Hamas.
And that's not. I don't think that's the majority. I don't even think it's half. I just
So
think
again, the question is Hamas allowing them to do it or they can't stop?
I think Hamas is just on their back foot, right?
So
Or
they can't stop
they're
it.
on their heels in a defensive
But
position.
that's an important position. So you're saying they because what you're saying is they can't stop it. Meaning they're so weakened at this point that what we're seeing is a legitimate sign of potentially a revolution.
Oh,
I mean, there's preemptive, defense, right? If the flyers are coming down sky on all the population saying you better clear out because we're coming again for the ground invasion, I think that's going to
they're already there though.
But I'm saying
Yeah.
since that moment, I'm pretty sure that that's like turning on the lights and you see scurrying, right? It's like you're talking about whatever's left of the militia that's worried about the ones who are already there. Why would they go and care about 1,000 men and boys and whoever else is there who's undercover Hamas? Um, they wouldn't go and just what kill them. If you put them in enough of a bind, half of those people who are supposedly going and speaking out against Hamas probably might join them out of desperation because that'll guarantee them some food.
So
I see what you're saying.
so let me ask you this. So if you were
They control the aid, yeah.
so if you were to call somebody you knew in Gaza and say, listen, you want to get out, and they said yes, how would they go about doing it?
Do you want
To leave. They want if they said I want to
Oh,
leave.
the last time I knew that someone was able to leave was in the early days of the war. You'd pay 5 to 8 and $13,000 to get
To
smuggled
Egypt.
into Egypt.
So you're paying smugglers to get you through
And
the
Egypt pockets the whole thing.
right. So that's one of the reasons that yeah. So Egypt is this was a bit their business got turned out
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
This has been a business for Egypt
This-
basically.
For the
this was
Sinai
the
smugglers.
This is the
The
backup
coyotes.
business because they were smuggling like they used to smuggle like
The
a lot of like
weapons,
weapons and
supplies.
supplies and drugs and
Yeah,
everything
I mean, it's
into
like the
Gaza.
cartels that we have here with the coyotes. It's not different. I don't think it's government sponsored or anything like that. I think it's just self-interest.
No, apparently the cartels in Egypt are like sort of like in South America, like are very like connected within the government.
Well,
Um,
they'd have to. I mean, you'd have to have government connections and to be able
Yeah,
to. I mean, that border is such a hotbed. It's such a
yeah.
political issue. You'd have to have government complicity to be running
but
smuggling
from what I understand
operations
is
in those tunnels that they've discovered in the Philadelphia corridor and
Potentially.
all those
but,
regions in
but,
the South.
but here's the thing. Let's say like I know like a lot of I grew up like in a community in Israel. Like everybody served. I actually got kicked out of the army after one day.
Uh,
Yeah, how did you know?
I could tell.
All right. Why? Because I'm high right now. Like,
He's not cut for the army.
No, you mentioned it before.
I did.
Listen, you mentioned just being a
Ferris, let me say
Okay,
this:
fine.
Hamas would love him
No,
to
no,
be in the
no,
army.
no.
Hamas would love him to be in the idea.
No, why?
I love you.
I actually have boys that I was going to draft into tanks.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
like boys I was actually drafting on the same day.
You were driving tanks.
No, I was supposed to draft into tanks. I'll be perfect for tanks because like I'm fit but short, so it's like
Right,
I don't take up too much room. But like if you need me
yeah.
to pick something up,
Who thinks Tony
I'm just
Yoni
as
would be
short.
a good tank driver?
I'll be an amazing tank driver.
Yoni the tank.
Yeah, I'm a tank. Um, no, so basically, like, I know my boys like used to hotbox the tank.
Okay. Oh,
No, yeah.
nice. Okay, okay.
And I,
That sounds fun.
but what I'm saying is that first of all, from over here is that the IDF completely already took the Nitzur corridor
Yeah, yeah.
across Gaza. Okay, so
Quickly.
okay,
Yeah.
very quickly, like, overnight. North Gaza, South Gaza is not connected anymore.
Right.
Philadelphia corridor, they never really ever left. Okay,
Yeah.
and then what they're doing is their strategy this time is that they're pushing in, not from north to south, but just straight forward from Israel. They're pushing them like into the sea basically.
Yeah.
So and then okay, and they're doing it much more quick, much more relentless.
They're
Just
doing the Ahmadinejad.
yeah. Um, but from what I understand is that from what people are telling me is that there is no real Hamas. Like Hamas at this point
Yeah.
is the people of Gaza. They found weapons and artillery and Hamas propaganda in every single house they went
See,
into.
that's believable.
So I'm saying is that I don't believe that there's this mass uprising against Hamas because you are Hamas. Like to what?
I mean,
Well, this okay.
not
So
not a mass uprising, right? But
so Yoni, this I mean
These are hundreds
this
of thousands of people, and only men. Okay, like first of all, there's women aren't allowed to go outside, right? So there's 100,000 men. That's really
everyone's
200.
out. Everyone's outside. There's no inside anymore.
Yeah, but to be honest though, the weird thing is though
well the
you only see
videos we're
men,
seeing though are seeing like
only
you're
men.
seeing only men, and this is where again
Yeah.
someone who's been in PR and I've done
Yeah.
clandestine PR and all sorts of
Yeah. Yeah.
some of this when I look at this, I'm like, yeah,
It's another reason you
it
think
looks
Hamas started
staged.
it. Like it's like they're still so religious that they don't let women march with them.
Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah, yeah. That's actually valid.
That's valid,
That's
right?
valid. Yeah, it's valid. So, but no, like I'm thinking culturally too. Uh, the women. Yeah, I mean, I don't know actually. That's like I've been to protests in Jordan, and
What's that like? That must be a whole nother level.
it's actually pretty docile. It's
Really?
like, yeah,
Compared to like, was Colombia more aggressive than protesting in Amman, Jordan?
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
They're scared of the police.
yeah. There's a
Oh, that's right. You're right. You know what? You're right.
It's police.
You're right.
All they have to do is if they just like raise their voice a little bit, the tear gas.
Apparently, it was crazy a few months ago. They
Maybe.
said that the Iranian regime was like really like funding the pro-Palestine protests they're having.
Oh, there
They
too.
tried to do a coup.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, they don't.
The coups are ongoing. The attempts for a coup in Jordan are ongoing.
And that's the way the IRGC does it. Like they'll make you burn down your country for Palestine.
Well, let's come
Wherever you live, it doesn't matter.
let's come back to Gaza. So the question. So we have two questions. One is the guy that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Is he legitimate? So and if he is, can we get him to go on a live stream with us? I'm being told no, it's too dangerous. If he is real, it's going to be too dangerous for him. There's no way. And I'm also being told friends of mine in Israel saying, "Be careful. This is and Yoni is saying this is an op. They're trying to leverage my platform to promote their message."
I still think it's cool to talk to them.
Listen, I'm not. Listen, I'm open minded, and like I am with my friend Firas, I'm really, listen, I'm known for being out on the streets as a Zionist bully, right? A lot of people do not like me. Nardine Kiswani hates me. People's Forum hates me. Code Pink hate me.
Did you see what Katie Halper said about you?
Oh, she hates me. Yeah, she hates
Katie
me.
Halper.
Yeah, she's a piece of shit. Katie Halper is truly a vile.
It was just a smear. It had nothing to do with character. They were just, that was
Well, this is what they do. So because if you look at a lot of my communication, I mean, I'm putting out policy papers. I'm meeting with people in government. I was the executive director for Beitar for a little bit, and I was involved in some pretty aggressive campaigns.
so that threat. That,
Well, of course, and what I'm realizing, and quite frankly, what's most interesting, and I appreciate you is I'm being attacked more by the progressive Jewish left, the anti-Zionist appeasement Jew who only identifies as a Jew when they want to criticize Israel, and I don't get it. Katie Halper is vile. Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mate, whose father's Gabor Mate is a Holocaust survivor, right? Who also is now and I don't really understand the incentive, because it also doesn't bring peace, and which is why I think that the future is this dialogue where we can debate and argue about solutions versus just, I mean, history is important, right? And there needs to be
Yeah.
context. But as an example, one of the initiatives that I'm deeply involved with is Judea and Samaria,
Yeah.
and the advocation of that to stop referring it to the West Bank because that is Jordanian definition of their territory. And if we want to bring peace, and it's not to ethnically cleanse the people that should be there and want to be there and be there in peace and live and prosper equally with Jews and Druze and Christians and everybody else in the land. But it's not the West Bank of Jordan, it's Judea and Samaria, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about
So
on our
it's
show. But
yeah.
but the point though is
That's
that
actually the thing that Jews and like Palestinian like Arabs have really have in common is that if we weren't fighting each other, we'd be fighting ourselves.
well, listen, you put three
We
Jews in a
wouldn't.
room and you get six opinions,
Yeah, I
right?
know, like that's the stupidest thing about like October 7th, like from is that if October 7th never happened, like a civil war probably would have broken out in Israel.
that's true. That's
Eh,
true
So
because it was going in that
Like,
direction.
like
Yeah.
and
if I was just like if you guys were like a little bit more patient, like yo,
it's so and I will say I say with sincerity every time I get into a fight with a pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, whatever they are at these protests, and I try to get into a conversation. One of the things I say is in September of 2023, I was at the UN marches with my very, very left-leaning Israeli friends
Uh-huh.
against Netanyahu. Not that I was with them, but I was really opening my mind to, maybe there needs to be some changes there, and change, and I didn't really understand the details of the judicial reforms that he was pushing. And so I went to
I'm
really,
for the initial.
well, I went to get educated. I didn't really understand what it was about. And I was really starting to believe, and this was right before October 7th, that, maybe Bibi's got to go. Maybe there needs to be a wholesale shift in the government. And then October 7th happened, and it was like, not just me, almost every Israeli friend that I have that's, progressive, kibbutznik, socialist, whatever, you know, agnostic, Jewish Israeli, but, not religious. They all, we're all, moving to the right. I mean, and I don't necessarily think it's just the support for Netanyahu. It's like this fear that if they don't lead with strength, that,
Because all the things the left wanted never worked. I mean, Oslo never worked. Um, Robin, Omar, Barak tried to give away like most of the country. Arafat
well,
didn't want it.
Well, I was going to say the biggest problem, I mean, in my opinion, this is what I look forward to really talking about Ferris because he brings a lot of knowledge. Is I have this slogan
I
that
actually think that
until
like
Arab mothers love their children more than they hate Israel, the suffering will continue. Now, that saying puts the onus on one side, and that may not be reasonable, but from a political perspective, until there is a leader that unifies all of the Arabs in that area between Gaza and through some, I believe, an a moderate economic platform where freedom of a religion is allowed, freedom of expression is allowed, and I think that would be transformative. But in my theory, why that can't happen is has nothing to do with the Palestinians or the Israelis or the Jews on all sides. I don't believe Iran and Qatar truly want a freely democratic Palestinian state where freedom of expression, where women
nobody.
could vote and there's
No,
a pride parade. That's the last thing that they want. That would inspire Muslims around the Middle East to rise up. What do you think?
So
yeah.
a couple of questions. Well, to your point, I think similarly, had all this not broken out, the Palestinians in the basically in the territories, in the Palestinian territories, the little enclaves, right? Area B is what it's come down to. they would have broken out against each other too.
Yeah.
Because there were assassinations, there were riots at the same time as the protests. But what I want to ask you
It's interesting.
is your perspective as an Israeli on Arab Israelis who,
Arab Israelis.
yeah, because there's a clear distinction. I mean, these people came from the same ancestors.
Yeah.
If you just trace it 1 or 2 generations back.
course.
But
Depends on where you were, depending on where you got citizenship. It wasn't even because there was a war and displacement. So just where you were on like that given week depended if you got citizenship or not. Like if you were in Ramla, you got citizenship. If you were in Ramala, you didn't get it.
right,
20 minutes away by car. Like that's it.
yeah,
That's what we're talking about.
yeah.
My opinion on Arab Israelis. So, interesting enough, I actually used to have a boy in Tel Aviv who Arab Israeli voted for Bibi.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And there's people, Arab Israelis, who tell me like right wing, like more right wing than they do. Like there's, I met Arab Israelis who told me like Kahana was wrong. Like that's it, like, just like that. Like listen, whenever they're not, like there's something within, and I also people ask me like I actually had this conversation just the other day. Like I don't hate Palestinians, I don't hate Arabs at all. Like I have no problem against them. I actually respect them to some extent. That's why I'm scared of them, like because they're never gonna give up. Kind of those certain like
Well,
essence.
but that's in my view, the nihilistic ideology that we're fighting. Because when I hang with my friend Faraz here, and let's take the American out. Let's say I'm a Jew, he's a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, and and I'm a Zionist, and he's coming from at least we're having real, honest conversations in truth, right?
yeah,
There's an ideology that's sweeping the world that's driven partly in they're pushing a draconian version of Islam, my understanding, right? That's it's very archaic, it's very repressive, right? Which I believe most Muslims in America would not really want, right? In
yeah.
reality, they party, come on,
Agreed.
they're American as me, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
So if we're being honest about that version of Islam that you're talking about, that's nihilism, right? Right? These are people that are being educated from birth that it's better to die
Towards
killing Jews and Israelis than to fight, you know what I mean, and die for if it's really your homeland and if someone's really invading you. But they're sending people up to do suicide bombing, and they're,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And just looking at October 7th, and this is the fight that we're having on the ground
Uh,
here is, you say to somebody, October 7th was horrific. Yes, but that's not where it started. But
yeah.
what happened on October 7th was October 7th, and eh, forget my bias and interest and concern and dismay. How did this help the people in Gaza?
Wait,
Well,
listen.
hold on. I want to first ask the question.
I was gonna finish my point about Arab Israelis though.
yeah. Yeah.
Is that I actually think that Arab Israelis at the end of the day, what has to happen is that they have to become like full like Israelis. Like they have to serve in the military, they have to do service, they have to do everything that a regular Israeli Jew needs to do, and they have to like be able to like identify as Israelis, which I know a lot of Arabs do that. A lot of Arabs do see themselves as they're Israelis and they're happy and they're proud of it and they probably have better lives than most people in the Middle East. But some people don't. And I just think that yeah, they have to find a way to fully integrate.
Yeah. So do you see a path for if if there were kind of like charters, a federation or something where you have like an onslaught of Palestinians today and what you're calling Judea and Samaria, historically Judea and Samaria, is a name that you call the West Bank. I don't care about whether it's with the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. Obviously, I'm very far removed from it. Not too far removed. I have family that's in there, but I don't think they care about the name West Bank either. I think they just care about their villages. Each one is caring about because even villages can fight,
Yeah,
and they're caring about their own village. But let's say, one peaceful village after another says, you know what? I've worked for Israelis. I've worked with Israelis. Uh, we've broken bread together. We've had and I get along with a lot of Jewish Israelis more than I get along with a lot of people in my own village. And they decide, you know what? I want a path to being like what those Arab Israelis are. Do you think that's a bad idea?
no,
No.
As long as they're you're saying not part of that nihilistic
Well,
ideology.
yes. I mean, and that's the one thing I think we as Jews, for 80 years, have been wrapping our heads around, like, because you see in the peace deals, I mean,
mm,
the Israeli leadership have been willing to give up land, right? So in my view, this has never really been about land. right? And I believe that the most of the Arabs in these territories have been held prisoner by other Muslim countries to be used as a buttress, a
Yeah,
pawn
yeah.
against Western ideology.
By Hamas, the Palestinian Authority,
Well, that's the modern
Canadian
day.
government, the Lebanese,
Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad,
Turks.
all of them. But at the top, it's Iran and Qatar.
Sure.
Those are the puppets and masters at the top who are fueling the finances and build and supporting these proxy networks. And it's not just there, it's here. And that's, I mean, that's the fight I'm in, is the cognitive war here in the US, right? And so the relevance to Judea and Samaria is, in my view, part of this cognitive war, right? Almost like just disassociating even how Israel took over sovereignty over the West Bank, right? It wasn't they marched in and just took it. Jordan was firing on them constantly from 1948, constantly attacking, just sniper shots across the wall into.
So preemptive.
Well, no, then the '67 war happened, and
Right.
remember that. I mean, remember all these other Arab nations were attacking, and Israel went on the offensive, and they took sovereignty over the West Bank. But I would then ask the question when I'm challenged with these historical facts, why didn't Jordan, it's simply in 1965 or prior, give sovereignty to the Palestinians?
So I have my own conspiracy theories on that, but I'm not going to get into that. I think there was a very serious im imperial political motivation not to. So I asked you a question for U.S. and Israeli, but I want to ask you as a descendant of Holocaust survivors, um, what is your view then on what happened in Warsaw? And do you see any type of correlation between what happened in Warsaw and what's happening now to the Palestinians?
I don't see any. So my grandfather was in the Warsaw Ghetto, so it's
Yeah.
actually I have some actual knowledge of this from my family. My grandfather was a fighter in the Warsaw Ghetto. He actually wasn't captured. He actually made it out before they tore it down to the forest, and then joined the resistance, was shot, captured, and then ultimately taken to Birkenau, Auschwitz-Birkenau. And he only survived because he was a mechanical engineer and he was useful labor, and there were factories nearby, and they marched him every day to work. He said he worked on airplane parts and for replacement parts for different factories and whatever because he was an engineer, and they gave him just enough food to stay alive. So to answer your question, I don't see the correlation because the Jews that were ultimately in the Warsaw Ghetto, they were all rounded up from all over Poland and put into this, and it was always meant to be temporary because the plan was to exterminate everybody. So it was a holding area. So when the Jews who finally rose up and decided to fight back, because most of them are sheep, right? And this is part of my passion. I won't be marched like, I'm not my grandfather's generation. As much as I love them, I'm not his generation, right? I'm going to go down fighting. Um, they were rounded up and like sheep, and that was a holding until they were ultimately trained off to Auschwitz. Now, the people that fought back, um, you know, I don't see the correlation because for me, the people that are fighting supposedly for the Arabs and the children in Gaza, I don't see evidence they're fighting for them, right? And this is my whole point of October 7th is there was no, they knew there was no military victory possible, right? I think the success that they had and the death and destruction that occurred was probably even beyond what they expected they would achieve, right? And we still need to understand how that even happened. But this comes to my basic premise that there will never be peace and love and prosperity for those Arabs until there is a leadership that is engaging in honest dialogue, meaning on behalf of the children, with the world, saying, we're going to educate our children to get along with everybody, to be peaceful, right? And I think this is where they're victims of education and they're trapped. So that's where, if you're going to make the correlation, to me, the Hamas or the Nazis.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Go ahead. Hey, you want to step off camera?
Oh no, no, I was
Do
just
that.
wanting to make sure
So,
that we
ladies
were
and
doing
gentlemen, I think we're going to be wrapping this up soon, but this is a pretty
entrance
interesting
because
conversation.
I think they were
Parents got to take a call
before
from his wife. We're running long today.
Uh,
As soon as you said Arab mom, I got so hungry for hummus.
no, that was not my wife. No, my wife would have called a different phone.
Oh,
You would have heard that phone call. That was
you got a bat phone for your wife.
yeah. I have a special phone for that one. No. This is just a work call.
Got it.
All handled.
Got it. So look,
Yeah.
I think we can go on for a while. I want to kind of bring this to
Yeah.
kind of a wrap because this is really interesting.
What's
And
the
again,
best hummus in New York?
Oh man, the best hummus in New York. I haven't even tasted good hummus.
really.
Show me a good hummus and I'll try it out.
So where do you go? Where are the places you go?
I go to Turco on 43rd and 9th. Uh, I've been there, but I don't really have Mediterranean food.
So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a field trip. You're gonna take me to a really good Palestinian restaurant.
There's only one.
Okay, and and I'll take you to a really
Take
good
me to the Tabernacle. You're buying.
Tabernacle. Okay.
Tabernacle?
Okay.
I'd say to Miriam.
I would say Miriam might be good, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm biased. I like the Tabernacle.
But also too, I'm Ashkenazi, and all truth be told, if I'm reincarnated, I'm coming back as a Sephardic. The food is much better.
So much better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I
I'm
mean,
also Ashkenaz. But so we already like once you move to Israel, like, you become like you like the especially because I grew up like sort of like in like the national like religious ones. So like I got a lot of Spartans,
yeah.
Ethiopians.
Okay. Yeah, but poor Mizrahim, they don't they got the drew the short straw in Israel. Is that what happened? You said that with a badge of pride.
I did.
But
I've
that's
actually
good.
not. I actually like fuck with Spartan culture way more.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, I want to try their food now.
Food is
No,
great.
because like
Well,
Ashkenaz is like elitist,
it's
like lefty, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
like. But I'm not like I'm just not that. Like I don't
I mean, I love food from
food for
Lebanon.
Trump.
I love Lebanese food, Tunisian food, Moroccan food. I love the cuisine from all those countries.
So the only Palestinian restaurant in Manhattan is owned by an Arab Israeli.
Oh, really?
Oh my God,
Are you kidding me?
these motherfuckers are taking over.
It's good food, but it's kind of more on the fine dining side than it is casual. But
Honestly, traveling the world as an Arab Israeli is probably the most confusing shit ever. Like, no, wallah, I'm from Israel.
Interesting.
Marhaba.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thank you guys. So look out for Bridging Two Worlds. I'm going to be sending out some announcements shortly or within a week or so, and Ferris and I are going to tighten that up and really get deeper into, the world of the Arab Muslim Palestinian American world and the Jewish Zionist American world and solutions and exciting, uncomfortable conversations in a productive, healthy way. So,
we have to make an agenda to talk about the term Fakistinian. I
Fakistinian.
really want to talk about that.
You want to talk about a Fakistinian?
Yeah, Fakist. I like that term. I want to dive into it.
What's a Fakistinian?
Oh, you haven't heard
I
that?
have it. I'm curious what you're.
Oh no, we'll leave that for another episode. I gotta put a teaser out there.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Fakistinians, which my friend Ferris is open.
Just
They
interested,
brought this up.
do your grandparents identify as Arab or as Palestinian?
Either
Neither.
Muslim.
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 It's interesting. Older generations, what I'm finding is
They
because
don't,
because
yeah.
they grew up, the ones that remember, pre 1945, right?
Yes, Arafat.
Well, it was Pan Arabia, and you hear stories, and I see these old documentaries where if you were born in Amman, you can then go to Baghdad, or you can go to Damascus, and like there were no borders, like
Right.
so you could be born, go to school there, work there. There were no visa issues. There was no so much about the Middle East, and we'll talk about this later, which is also really most Americans don't understand. They think that Israel was just created by itself. The entire Middle East was redrawn after World War II, and Israel was only, one of what, 23 countries, 24 countries that were essentially invented or created by the redrawing of the map.
Actually, there was an identity that was kind of loose. It wasn't like anyone like my grandparents and their parents were willing to fight for it and make it a
Yeah.
nationality, but they saw themselves as like Levantine, Shem,
Yeah.
right? Like more of like the Levant. So, like to your point, yeah, they were able to go to Damascus, to go to Amman, to go.
And to that point, Jordan, in my view, is where the Palestinians got screwed, right? That should have been Palestine.
And Palestinian, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, did not mean Arab Muslim like it does today. They were
No.
Palestinian Jews.
Jews.
Right. And it was a territory, a mandate that the British ruled after the Ottoman Turk Empire fell.
I used to be able to take a taxi like from like Gaza to
Imagine that.
Good old Ottoman.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I always said if Israel in the middle, if the Muslims if all got together, it'd be the most powerful economic bloc in the world. They would dominate.
Yeah, but now you're being ruled by Erdogan and stuff. It wouldn't
Well,
that good anyways.
You don't
all right, look, guys, let's wrap up the show. Thank you very much, Ross Click,
Oh,
Yoni Kletzel.
what's up? Cool.
Ferris.
32 live viewers. It's crazy.
How many?
32 live.
I was kidding.